Welcome to the Automation and Self-Service podcast hosted by Networld Media Group. My name is Sandra, and I'm the editor for kioskmarketplace.com, and I'm joined today by Rebecca Kahn, franchise business leader executive for Gongcha US and Canada. How are you?
I'm good. Hi, it's nice to see you again.
Yeah, you too. I'm so glad to be chatting with you. So we previously talked about how Gongcha's kiosks were kind of resonating with Gen Z in particular. And I'm curious to know if you could just start us off by talking about your kiosk journey in general. So like, where did you first start the kiosks? And then how did you decide to expand?
So we had first started with one of our masters in the DMV, so DC, Maryland, Virginia area. She is one of our best master franchisees when it comes to operations and is really our tech innovator. She's been experimenting with all sorts of technology for the last 3 years. So when I came on board, the kiosk had been in place since March of 2022. And she had partnered with Pebla, which was a very new POS kiosk mobile app group to the industry. They're actually in Bethesda, so very close to where I'm at and where Emily is. So they partnered up with the Pebla group and had kiosks installed in all of their stores, starting with one of their DC locations. And they just had such huge success with it was very steady growth month over month with how many transactions were going through the kiosk. And I think that, I know that it has a lot to do with our core demographic. So we have the Gen Zs, the millennials, who are very comfortable with technology. They love the contactless, I'd say, interaction when it comes to visiting restaurants or stores. And so it comes very natural to them. And for us as a bubble tea brand, it went without saying that this was the next thing that we needed to jump into, because our menu is very complex. In terms of how many drink series that we have and the number of toppings. There's 600 ways to personalize a drink at Gongcha. Wow. So to have that settle in. Yeah. And so it's a lot. And sometimes it can be really overwhelming to a guest who's new. And, we are still having the guest learn about us in the United States. We're very well known globally, but we're really breaking into the scene here. And so when you have such a complex menu and you have drinks that are not as familiar to guests in the U.S., the kiosk really gives great visuals. It allows you to explore the different drink series. So it's really your guide to our menu. And visuals are so important because it really eliminates the risk that the guest is taking with trying something new, because they know what they're getting themselves into. They can see what the topping is going to look like. They can see what the drink looks like. And so it's a very easy, seamless process for them to make the right choice and to personalize, because most guests, in other brands that are don't have the kiosk as kind of ingrained into their business, or you have a lot of guests that will just order what they normally order, like getting their usual. Whereas with the kiosk, that really broadened our guests' horizons and gave them the opportunity to explore something new. So when I first went into the DMV location with my master franchisee coming into Gongcha, learning more about her operations, the kiosk was such a hot topic. And she really broke down, exactly what I'm telling you now, and why this has been she's had such huge success. Their hardware is actually really nice too. It's like Apple type hardware, so it's
Oh, nice.
yeah, so it's a little more, I'd say higher end, and it looks really nice in the store. And the Pebble guys they're really great about designing the user interface to be very familiar to the Gen Z and the young millennial. It's very much similar to scrolling through TikTok or, playing around with your iPhone. So everything's so accessible and really easy you're not having to teach the guest about a whole new user interface.
Right. It just feels
So
intuitive to them.
exactly. So we just over time, because we were seeing 3.2% increase in users through the kiosk month over month. So it went without saying, like, this is something we need to be fully invested in. It's driving our business. You started to see more diversity in our sales in our PMEX, which was also a really positive sign, because when you're bringing in all this inventory, how you're selling quite a bit of your top 10 drinks, but you have other ingredients that are going to waste more frequently. And it becomes harder to forecast what you need, because you're not. So we see that difference in between stores that have the kiosk and stores that don't. So they're able to go through their inventory more consistently, because you have guests it's more accessible to the guests.
So does the kiosk track the amount? Do you get that data from the kiosk itself in terms of like how much of this product is used? Is this add-on very popular?
Yes.
How does that work?
So we get reporting from the Pebla group. We also can download our own reporting from their portal, just like any other POS vendor. So we have a really good sense of which toppings are being purchased, more than others, and so we have really good insights that we're getting from the data.
That's awesome. So we previously talked a little bit about there's kind of this like love-hate relationship with introducing kiosks, because there's kind of like that fear that it might kind of interfere with the customer employee interaction. And you had some pretty cool insights that you noticed, especially with like Gen Z and millennials, about how they order at the kiosk and how well, I'll let you take it away because I don't. It's really fascinating to your observations about how they looked at the kiosk and used it. Yeah,
Definitely, it's something that I've not seen before in my experience with other brands. The guest is coming in, with a group of friends. They're all gathering around the kiosk and each kind of picking what they want. Oh no, I like this topping. Oh no, I want to add this one. And so it's also a higher check because you have a group of friends placing their order together. And then they use apps like Venmo and Zelle to kind of pay each other back. And then you have the team members behind the counter who are they're less stressed. They're able to focus on what they're doing, because we have a lot of young kids that work in our stores. And so, they also don't want to be, so worried about attending the guest and also making these very complex drink builds. And so they're able to focus on actually making the tea and the drinks. And then, once the drinks, we've had to really be smart about how we transition that guest interaction, because we have so many of our transactions coming through the kiosk. So how do you have that still that personal connection? Mm-hmm. I think that the kiosk is giving you the personalized experience. And then when you have the drink delivered to you, that's where you have the more human personal experience, where they are calling out your name instead of a number. They're waiting for you to come and get the drink versus just leaving it and walking away.
Oh, nice.
And making that eye contact, and then also the handoff. So I mentioned, I think I brought this up when we were talking last, but I have a master franchisee in Colorado who has trained his team to have a very special handoff. And when I asked him, I was like, why is this so important to you? And he said, I really think it speaks to the ritual aspect of making and serving tea. And Gong Cha means, I don't know if you know this, but it means tea for the emperor. So tea fit for the emperor. It's a very high quality, very premium tea leaves. And that really nice send off with the eye contact and the using of the name. If you can hit those 3 points, then you have your personalized experience. We've also been focused on having the stores install some kind of a bell that's not annoying when a guest walks in, so that, because some of our tea canisters block a little bit of that visibility, and if you have just one team member working, how do they welcome the guest? How do they hear that guest is coming in? So with that little installation, they're able to know, okay, there's a guest, and they can say, hi, welcome to Gong Cha. Let me know if you have any questions. So that's how we've kind of evolved our personal guest experience while implementing this new technology into the stores.
That's fascinating. So it sounds to me like the kiosks have become kind of an avenue to further personalize the experience for the customers. So rather than placing the order, I didn't realize that they don't sit the drink down and leave it for the customer to get. They personally hand it off. So it sounds like adding in those like extra touches are necessary and helpful in terms of maintaining that relationship with your customers. I really love that. I have a question about if you've come up with any, if you've come up against any challenges with, I'm sure you have, but what kind of challenges have the kiosks presented, and how have you kind of navigated those?
So we have had some challenges in rolling out the kiosks because you always have to present that business case to the franchisee. So there at the beginning, you're starting off with some challenge. There's a little bit of pushback, especially with franchisees that are not as familiar with kiosks and the benefit that it adds to the business. So I've worked with master franchisees to really coach them to use the insights and the data to build that business case, rather than saying you just have to install it. Actually giving them that business case and talking them through it. We've also, once the kiosk is in the store, there's the challenge of training the store team to direct the guests to the kiosk. So, how do you do that when you're one person working and sometimes you can't hear that the guest is coming in through the door? And so you might be in the back of house, prepping, or you might be just not visible, you can't see with the tea canisters. So the implementation of that bell, we've also used kind of some signage to direct the guests to the kiosk, the placement of the kiosk in the store. So we've addressed that specific challenge by doing that. We've also, I think, the specifics of how to communicate, like the guest survey cups. That was another challenge. How do we gather feedback when you're not at the POS and saying, here's your receipt. If you would leave us feedback on how your visit was today. So how do we transfer that over to the kiosk? How we saw a little bit of a dip in how much feedback we were getting from our guests because that piece wasn't there. So that was a challenge. But when we were able to work with our partners at Pebla to put the QR code on the kiosk at the end of the transaction, and we provided a free topping or additional loyalty points for leaving feedback, that bumped our surveys count past where we were
Oh, sure. Yeah.
prior. Yeah. So that was a great learning. And so we just replicated that. And then we were able to put that QR code also on the digital receipts that they were getting via
Oh,
email.
nice.
Yeah. And what was even more interesting, we've just been very lucky, but we were able to, if you offer loyalty points, then they automatically join your loyalty program. And if they join your loyalty program, they're managing those points through the mobile app. And once they're in the mobile app, they have access to delivery, white label delivery. So you see, it's this perfect circle of life for all of our technology spaces. So, that led to all of this. And it was awesome to see that just this little tweak and this little fix resulted in almost solving the industry-wide question of how do you get the guest into the mobile app. This is pretty phenomenal.
Right. Yeah.
that we were able to do that.
You say luck, I say strategy, and it's a brilliant one. And I want to know a little bit because one of the things that keeps Gen Z and millennials in particular coming back to kiosks is the loyalty program and the opportunity to kind of track their points and be able to use them a little bit more accessibly than maybe at a traditional register. So could you tell me a little bit about how the loyalty program presents itself in your kiosks?
Yeah, so on the kiosk, they at the end of the transaction, after they play or right before they pay, it'll ask them, "Would you like to join our loyalty program, or would you like to enter in your phone number to earn points?" And it'll say also if you're already a loyalty member, it'll ask you if you want to apply your points that are in your account to this transaction. Or it'll tell them if they're new, you've earned this many loyalty points, download our mobile app to manage your points. So there's messaging there to direct them to the app. And we started using loyalty points because there were some challenges with doing a free topping through the kiosk. And so to address that, we said, well, since the kiosk is linked to the mobile app, why don't we use loyalty points? And the Gen Zs are much more, we found they prefer the loyalty points over the free topping. We have higher redemption in loyalty points than we do in our topping, our free topping redemption.
Interesting. So when they redeem the loyalty points, what does that do for their order?
It lowers the price.
Oh, okay. That makes perfect sense. Yeah. Understood. So the kiosks and the app are working really well together. Are those interfaces also similar?
Yes, very.
Awesome.
So, and Pebla, they were very smart about this. Because if your mobile app looks completely different than the kiosk user interface, then you have to have the guest learn how to use the mobile app. And that's in itself complicated. So they spent quite a bit of time making sure that it looked very similar. So that was very helpful because so often you find that the kiosk in the store does not match the mobile app. And so you're having to learn the brand's user interface in two digital platforms.
Right. Yeah. And then there's the maybe kind of added anxiety of like being in line, having to navigate an unfamiliar platform. So that's really cool that they're
Yes.
so similar. So I have one last question about just kind of generally where do you see the future for kiosks at Gongcha? Do you anticipate that they will continue to grow, or what are your plans?
Great question. Yes, we haven't stopped growing yet since we've even in the DMV who's had the kiosk for since 2022. It's just been continued growth. Actually, in our corporate stores in the Chicago area, 91% of our transactions are kiosk.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. We have that, and it's because we have two and they're right in front of the door. And they're so easy to use that, they just default to that. 91% is off the charts. I don't think, at least to my knowledge, I've never heard of that before. So we definitely see that, or expect to see us get closer to that 90% in each of the markets, because every month we're growing in that channel. There's not a single market that has slowed down, and we see that as the future for placing orders. We are focused quite a bit on pushing our guests that use the kiosk into the mobile app. So we have our master franchisees working in partnership with Pebla to implement different strategies to find out what works best to get the guest into the mobile app. So we have a lot more. We'll have a lot more to share in months to come on how that's going, because that's our next challenge and our next goal when it comes to sales channel transactions.
Nice. So Gongcha has such a cool insight into how to use these kiosks. We previously talked about how people are trying to connect with Gen Z as consumers. And I think one of my favorite quotes of our previous conversation was, "We're onto something here," because this is
Yes.
an intuitive and natural process, and it's also just not kind of taking anything away. It's just adding to that customer experience in your stores. So I really appreciate you coming back on and chatting with me a little bit more about that. Is there anything else you would like to add before we go?
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure speaking to you again. And I'm excited to see where our industry is headed when it comes to the kiosk technology. It's such an important part of the business now. It's so relevant. I was speaking with my little sister the other day, and I was asking her. I'm 10 years older than her, so and she's very much a Gen Z. I asked her, why do you use the kiosk? And she said, when I walk into the store and I see a kiosk, I'm like, oh, thank God. And she was like, that's my first response. She's I rather would have the interaction and take my time finding what I want on the kiosk than to spend time in front of a register feeling anxious because I'm taking too much time, or because I don't know enough about what I'm ordering. Then it's just easier to do that. And she also had said, I said, why do you think our kiosk transactions have grown so quickly over the years? Because it almost kind of made a huge leap in who's using, and I know that this is across the industry. And she said, well, we have more money now to spend. She said, so we're buying more. So there's a lot more coming out of the pocket of the Gen Z now. So, which is
They're
such a
getting jobs.
logical thing. Yes. So it's like, oh, well, that makes perfect sense. I don't know why I didn't think about that. So
We're thinking
yeah,
too
she was
hard
like, we
about
have
it.
jobs now. We're not. right? So they have more spending power.
Yeah, they do. They really do. So it's fascinating to see your approach to that, and I really appreciate you coming on again. It's always a pleasure, and that's all we have for today. Please remember to subscribe, and we will see you next time.